Alrighty, here we go live. So welcome everyone to Meshery development meeting. Today is 20th of September, Wednesday. So it's time for Meshery development meeting. I'll quickly share the meeting minutes again in chat. Make sure you mark your attendance and do drop any item related to Meshery, whether it's docs, UI, backend, anything. We'll be discussing the items over here. And with that, if you got webcams, this is not the call to hide. Feel free to open your webcams, and it's always nice to connect with face than just voice. All right. So with that, let's follow our weekly newcomers tradition to welcome newcomer. So if you are joining this call for the first time and haven't introduced yet, this is your chance. You can unmute yourself and say hi, give a quick introduction, tell us a bit more about you. So is there anyone who is joining this call for the first time? All right.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Shashank. I'm before start the meeting, and I'm a newcomer to this meeting.
That's great. Welcome to the call, Shashank.
Yeah.
All right. I see. Trevor, you raised your hand, so would like to go next.
Yeah, hey everyone. This is Trevor, and it's my first time joining you guys. Yeah, so I briefly I got to know about this project from the Linux Foundation. Yeah, so hopefully I'm really much expectant.
Oh, that's great. So, from where you are dialing in, Trevor?
I'm in Uganda, Africa.
Oh, great. Cool. Nice to have you, Trevor. All right. I see one
Pleasure.
more new name, Victor. So, hi, Victor. Is this your joining? Are you joining this call for the
Yes.
first time?
Yeah, it's my first time. I'm joining from Tampa, Florida. I'm in US. Actually, not a developer, so I'm interested in the disaster recovery aspect of this project.
Oh, that's wonderful. New aspect. All right. Cool. Welcome to the community and to this call, Victor. Okay. So with that, I think there's one more newcomer left. So Hannah. So hi, Hannah. Would like to say hi. I joined this call for the first time, or you have been here.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, hello. Yeah, my name is Anna from Nigeria.
All right. We can't hear you, Hannah. So I think you're having some audio issues. Feel free to introduce yourself in chat. All right. Cool. With that, let's start today's meeting. So we have been consistent with Hacktoberfest for about 4 years, and October is just around the corner. So it's time to introduce the event. I think someone is saying, yeah, Pankaj.
Someone is saying.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yeah, Pankaj, you are.
Yes, I am newbie in here. So let me introduce myself. Uh, I am Pankaj from Ghaziabad, Uttar Pradesh, India. Uh, I'm currently pursuing a full stack development in the Newton School, and I'm keen to learn the open source projects. That's why I'm here. How can I contribute and make some impact?
Cool. Yeah, making impact. Yeah, that's cool. Nice words, Pankaj. Welcome to the call. All right. I'll still pause for just one more second in case I missed anyone. Feel free to introduce yourself or say hi in chat. All right. Looks like I'll have to start again. No worries. So October is just around the corner, and we have been pretty consistent with organizing Hacktoberfest prep events. So last time we did was Hacktoberfest prep, getting into cloud native projects. So this year also we'll be organizing an event that will be again on 28th of September. That all the meeting links will be shared on social media, plus will be added to the committee calendar. So make sure you subscribe to the calendar, and we'll keep you updated on Slack, Discuss forum, and our social media. So make sure you go and follow them up. So stay tuned. And with that, it's time to start with today's first agenda. That's from Yash. So Yash would like to take the stage. Tell us a bit about environment APIs in Meshery.
Yeah, sure. Let me share the screen. Okay, so let me give you a small introduction to the environment. So environment is kind of like a resource which will manage the connections. So connections are like mm, connect with Meshery. So for connection and for the environment, we have a detailed information on the docs.meshery.io. So if you want to get to know like what is environment and how a connection connects with the environment and how environment connects with the workspaces. So these are in currently under development. So for the environment, I created the API in the Meshery. So I am done with the APIs over here, and the required APIs I already mentioned, and I need the review on this before merging that. So yeah, I also updated the API docs. So yeah, this is an update from my side. We need some info like review from you guys if you have any suggestion maybe.
All right. I see Pranav and Uzair are the reviewers here. So Pranav, Uzair, do you have any comments or feedback for Yash at the moment?
Not from my side at the moment. Actually, I have not looked at the PI, but right after this call, I'll have a look and let you know if there is anything.
All right. Sure. Sounds cool.
Thank you, Pranav and Vijay. Yeah, this is an update from my side. Okay, thank you.
All right. I'll share my screen again. Okay. So next up we have an item from Daniel. So hi, Daniel.
Hi. Yes. Let me share my screen, and then I'll be able to convey what I had. Okay. At the risk of owing $4, I'll just continue. I know I'll be corrected if my screen is not visible. So this was the issue. We needed to use streaming lists. That is when, okay, so Mesh Sync monitors a few resources that we have configured, and there's the current implementation uses
Daniel, sorry to interrupt. I think, yeah, your screen is not visible,
okay.
or you haven't shared it. Okay.
Okay.
Yep, you can see now.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so as I was saying, there's a feature called streaming list that is being introduced in Kubernetes version 1.27. It's still in the alpha stage. And this is because Mesh Sync observes, or rather monitors a few resources, like some given namespaces, pods, and such likes. And what we use now is what is called shared informers. And shared informers, under the hood, we have two primary functions. We have a list function and we have a watch function. So it's been discovered that whenever you have large clusters, having a list function and then a post function may have a runaway use in memory. Due to the list function, it gives out the output in form of chunks. So starting Kubernetes 1.27, it introduced a feature called streaming list, which you just have a watch function. And then the watch function, if you wish to, you can get everything from everything that is in the cache from when the object was created up to the current point in time by having a flag called send initial values true in that particular watch request. So this PR, or rather this issue, wanted us to use streaming list when available in a Kubernetes cluster, and then instead of using the watch
Did we lost Daniel? He's here. Hey Dan, are you there? We can't hear you. All right. I think we lost Daniel. We can't hear him. Okay, so he'll be joining back again. So until then, does anyone has context for Daniel's PR? If I'll share my screen. Pranav or Abid?
Yeah, I do. That is that. Oh, yeah. Actually, to the extent that Victor is here and sort of interested in this topic, the idea that Meshery is a multi-cluster Kubernetes manager, and Meshery connects to, well, we're not sure what the upper limit is yet, but to any number of Kubernetes clusters, as it tries to stay in sync with what's going on in those clusters, whether changes are occurring because Meshery has, user of Meshery has had Meshery take some action on the cluster, or because some external event, maybe a user signed into that cluster directly and affected it, or some external event occurred and affected changes in the cluster, Meshery needs to stay in sync. Hence, we have a Meshery operator. One of the custom controllers inside the operator is called MeshSync, and it stays continuously up to date with changes inside of Kubernetes. There's a lot of changes, though. Which ones are important and at what time that can change? And that changes over time. Which ones are important? Which ones you want to see? Users of Meshery in Meshery UI, anyway, have some amount of control over what information is exposed to them. They largely have that control in a relatively non-granular way today. If you have been inside of Meshery UI, you'll have noticed in the upper right-hand corner, there's a Kubernetes context switcher. So such that users, let's see if we have a Meshery UI up to make sure we're all on the same page here. It should be against the rules not to have a Meshery server running. So here's one, and this is in the playground. I wonder if we'll bump into the very special Safari error. Let me share the screen. So Abid, by the way, do you have an update on that Safari error by chance?
Yeah, actually, I fixed the error, but I don't know if it's fixed in Safari yet, because I didn't have access to Safari.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, I'll help you test. So I'm just pulling up a Meshery UI. Is Daniel back? Daniel, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, I got cut off power, so I lost my internet. But just let me know when to chime in.
Nice. Yeah. Now is a good time since it's not a Safari specific issue, Mr. Sophie.
Yeah. Actually, I fixed the bug. It's because some events are, I think, corrupted in the cloud. That's why. So I also implemented error boundary and stuff as package, and I have time.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Okay. Yeah, Daniel, I was just filling in give me some context for the issue that you're working on. You're trying to help make sure that MeshSync is more performant and that that there was a new streaming lists, a new capability introduced in a recent version of Kubernetes. As Daniel, as you go to provide support for this, and as you go to share an update about your learnings and your initial work here, there's a couple of questions that I'll toss out. Maybe you could speak to as you go. Some things that you've probably already had to consider a little bit, and if you haven't, that's okay. It'll just be feedback for you to think over. But one is, to the extent that we try to take that mesh sync tries to take advantage of a newer capability within Kubernetes. People run Meshery against various versions of Kubernetes. There would need to be some amount of intelligence or some amount of kind of a fallback routine that would use the optimal kind of streaming lists where available, but hopefully fallback if not available. So maybe you'll speak to this. Another question along here, another like related concern that doesn't have to be addressed here, or probably shouldn't be, but as a subsequent follow-on as you go to build up momentum and inside of MeshSync is, well, this notion of pipelines, the notion of dynamic configurability of MeshSync itself in terms of the MeshSync custom resource and users being able to control which Kubernetes resources should be watched or should be streamed. Because depending upon what user and at what time, they may or may not be interested in all of the things. And so with that, I'll let you continue where you were.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just get through where I was, and then I'll be able to address the two issues that were asked. So so the first thing, I think where I was here. Since it's a feature that is in the alpha stage, it's not fully supported. So we need to know if it's enabled in a specific cluster. So I was looking at all kinds of different ways of trying to look at or trying to get the flags that are enabled. And if anyone has a better resolve on how we can actually get the configuration, because at this point, the best things were pointing towards actually going to the Kubernetes manifest files and then seeing which features are enabled or not enabled. Another hack could be sort of running kubectl as a system process, and then that we use that to do some manipulation and then get which kind of feature is enabled. So the first thing is that how to, and that will form the sort of switch that will determine should we use the streaming list or should we fall back to the initial configuration that meshing uses. So that's I'd need help or ideas on how, or if anyone has a better way of determining which features are enabled in a cluster. That's the one thing that stumped me as I went on. And then so another thing that I noticed with regards to the whole feature is that we are sort of tightly, not as tightly coupled, but we are tightly coupled to using shared informers. And in this sense, the shared informers provide an underlying access to the cache that they get the data from. Now, if we go to using the streaming list, it's a more low-level approach, and the low-level approach of using a watch command does not allow, or rather does not give access to the underlying cache that is used. And this cache store is used further down in the pipeline in MeshSync. So that would be one consideration to think about whether we want to implement streaming lists at this point in time, or also, so the shared informers that we currently use, they under the hood, they still use the watch and list commands. So they could also be at some point in time in future where the shared informers are actually updated to using the streaming list. So so basically that's the final or rather the thing we can actually use as a yardstick to measure if we want to implement that now or at a later point in time. I'd appreciate feedback. I hope the link to the PR has been shared. It's also on the document. And then for the two questions asked, the dynamic configuration, right now, there is actually a config file that is committed to the host machine for configuring MeshSync. Maybe for dynamic configuration, it may require us to have, or rather to introduce some APIs or something like that that you can use to dynamic configure, but that is something that maybe I can look further into, and then I can give a recommendation. And then, I think that, and plus how we determine whether the feature is updated is now going to inform how we are going to add this feature onto MeshSync. Yeah. Any questions?
Anybody have feedback for Daniel? Daniel, good. You immediately started to answer my first question, which is great. Yeah, you're right about using the term hack as the concept of like running kubectl as a system process but yeah, that essentially we would want to invoke sort of the same API call that kubectl uses for. There's a kubectl API resources, and we could just test for the availability of a particular API group, like the streaming lists capability. That should be exposed there. If it isn't, it's a similar type check that ideally we would do up front to just verify whether or not it's available in that in that cluster. The reality is, like, it's sort of a nice to have check, because the reality is, when let's say that it's enabled for the cluster, or it's found that it's configured and enabled, and so MeshSync attempts to go use it. To the extent that MeshSync attempts to use it, and maybe since it's an alpha stage, it doesn't work with all of the resources, or it's got a couple of hiccups, or what, like, it attempts to use, it says that the cluster responds as it being available. MeshSync attempts to use it. It has trouble. Ideally, MeshSync would be resilient and potentially have a fallback routine to just go back to shared informers. And so in some respects, the initial check to verify whether or not streaming lists is available is something of a wasted operation, because it's like, hey, let's prefer the most efficient methodology by default, attempt to use it. If it's either configured but doesn't work, or if it's not available, either way, attempt to use it. If it doesn't, fall back, and then. So this is great. I mean, the research that you've got here, this is great. The things you're speaking to is interesting. It's new on the consideration about the cache and the use of cache by the informers. For my part, I'll need to give it a little more thought. I'm not sure what implications that necessarily has. Is there any more context you want to add to that at the moment?
Okay, yeah. I think what I'll do is I'll go and look at the actual purpose that the cache is used downstream, and then I'll provide that as more context so that you can make it can be better understood.
Nice, yeah. But you are otherwise on the hot path. I mean, you're otherwise headed the right direction from what I can see. So this is really encouraging. I think, yeah, the second consideration that I was mentioning about the being able to sort of dynamically configure MeshSync's, what it's actually watching, and doing that by making updates to MeshSync, the custom resource, MeshSync, the custom resource, that is not in scope of the original ask of what you're looking into, but but part of what you begin to consider starts to bleed into that. Because if, like, let's say that the default behavior is to try to use streaming lists, and then there's a fallback behavior to use dynamic shared informers otherwise. Well, maybe people would like to configure that behavior. Maybe they would just say, look, we don't trust streaming lists. We don't want to use it. And so we just want to configure, we want to override that default behavior. Well, that would be a configuration item inside of the custom resource, the mesh sync custom resource. And in the same way, to choose to configure how those pipelines work and what resources mesh sync should actively be watching, it is really the same, a very, very similar concern. It's like, well, there's a configuration inside the custom resource, and that informs, mesh sync itself. And so, so good. So it all folds back on itself, which is nice. So I think you'll be quite successful with making an impact on mesh sync in a couple of different ways. This is great.
Thank you.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Dan. That was a great update. So next up, we have an update on Systent from Antoinette. Antoinette, I would like to share.
Sure. Let's see. Give me 1 second. The first one I want to talk about is the system design system. Just to give an update, I did provide a quick update last week to call for anybody who contributed, want to test out the new components, quote unquote, from the system design system. So this particular PR just basically tell you that it has been moved to Yarn workspace, and there are some of the packages have been migrated to a different build system with Vite, and the design system itself has been moved to app, because in the middle of the build process that was given it was given unnecessary errors about the build process, so we just move it out of the way. So at this point, we do have we cover most of the components. They are all not styled at the moment. I am currently working on that, but you can go ahead and start testing them and make sure that they actually work, and you can actually replace it with your current whichever repo that you're doing it. But keep in mind that there are some that are missing, and so I would like to get some feedback so we can go ahead and create more issues, and then so I can go ahead and start improving them and getting them updated so that we can go ahead and start replacing it once and for all. Does anybody have any questions about this one?
Yeah. Abid, you didn't happen to get a chance to try out one of these components just yet, did you?
No, I didn't test them yet. I will, but I will today do a bunch of testing, please.
Nice. Yeah. And then just for quick context for everybody else that isn't familiar with Systent, this is just, well, it's I don't know that you would say a newly formed design system, or it is in the process of taking shape. And it is, I guess, under a beta release at the moment. So there's a lot of Meshery components out there, and there's other projects other than Meshery. There's a lot of design that goes on. There's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 different websites and a number of different apps that you all maintain. And there's like 4 different design systems at the moment, and they're all they sort of all interrelate. And so a number of you are engaged in this effort and trying to make sense of it, trying to centralize under one flag, so to speak, or one design system. And so I think on Monday, for those that are interested in this area, it's an awesome time to jump in, because the design system itself, it includes lots of research, lots of implementation, and a number of things in the middle. Rex and Rhoda might be presenting just some initial drafts of what a website might look like for this design system on the website call on Monday. I'm cautious about overcommitting them, but I think that's the goal. So if you're interested, don't miss, jump in here and do some tests. If you're into UI, into implementation, if you're a bit more into UX and visual design and research, Monday's call is probably a good one for you. So, but that's essentially what Antoinette was doing, is saying, hey, it's ready. It's for those that are on the implementation side of the house. Some of these components are ready to go, ready to be tested. So wonderful.
All right. Anything else from you, Anna?
Yes, I just have one more. So I have a PR to set up the prettier and the moving the lens stage to its own file. It can be improved over time if we need to add any more steps to make changes to it. Now, keep in mind, we know that linting and formatting are very opinionated. So however we do it, it's whatever. But this is just an example of what the changes that can be made across all of the files within UI directory. As you can see, it's a fairly large PR, but it can be changed, updated, updated, and it may, I'm sorry, updated to ignore some of the files that probably don't need to be changed. And as you can see, the changes here, you can see proposed config. Some of it been taken from Meshery Cloud. Some of it is added to remove some of the ESLint rules that we have. Or like I said, it can be added back on if we really need it, but it can be removed just to let prettier format it for you. And also just a reminder, ESLint and Next.js lint, they work differently. So in the workflow, ESLint has been used. So you may get some false positive, false negative whenever you see something that get messed up because it's not linted correctly. But we will need to use NetLint more than ESLint. Because Net already covers some of the common plugins and config that ESLint already have. And so just try to use that more than that. But the only problem is that Net only covers certain directories. So that means we still need to find some way to get it linted on the other files and then get it formatted on the rest of the part. So it's still a work in progress. Feedback is welcome. As you can see, so you kind of get the general idea. I may add the arrow bracket spacing back, but some of it has already been used by the prettier config anyway. So any questions, feedback? Say no, we don't want that. Just leave it alone.
Actually, it's great. Like it's getting like the configs are otherwise very confusing. So it's really great. We will have same consistent tooling across all repos.
Yeah, I wonder, it makes me wonder if you're able to configure ESLint to only run on certain directories or something. You might be able to do that in the workflow, but maybe that's a bit inconvenient as well. So, but yeah. This is great.
All right. Thanks, Antoinette. So Abid, you're up next on error boundaries on notification center.
Yeah, so like Leah already shared the crash. So I was actually not like 100% replicate the error because like I didn't have those corrupt events in my database, but I just checked like it is through the corrupt, like when the event doesn't have certain fields or like there are corrupt fields from like, I think I confirmed with Uzair and he told me like there were some previous corrupt events in cloud. So what I did is like I now validate the response that's coming from API because otherwise we have to do the optional chaining, like it would be littered everywhere and everywhere we have to put default values and it would like make the code harder to understand. So I just added the validation for the incoming responses at the top and also added another thing is like I added the support for React error boundaries. So I used the functional React error boundary package, like it's a separate package. It's not like it uses the native React error boundaries underneath and it's very small, like 2 KB package. We use it in other repos also. So the thing is like we can now have fine granular like control over where to display an error. And we can show that like if there is some component is crashing, we can just show a fallback UI at the time. The thing is like as we go like using the error boundaries frequently in other parts, I have just implemented it in the notification area, but we should use it in other areas also, like so the whole UI doesn't crash about for a small thing. Like it's currently the error is somewhere in a single notification and the whole UI is unusable, and that's pretty bad. The other thing that would really like improve the debugging and overall nature of the app is like having remote telemetry for like these errors. Like we should use something like Sentry or for the logging purposes. So once, because like when we have an error boundary, as we can have a fallback UI and also we can like log it to a remote service. So we can know like what is the error that users are facing. Like some user might have crashing this notification center and we don't know like if like Lee hadn't seen it, so we won't know. So that way we can like monitor what are the errors, and we could also like trace, like we could share the store present state store and like network logs alongside the like the error, so it would improve and debugging also. So any feedback on that?
Yeah. Pervasive use, I think, of both React error boundary and AJV, like both of the resiliency enhancements that you're making here. I wonder if there would be any reason that we wouldn't attempt to use those very, very broadly.
I think there's like no reason we should actually use it. Like I used to use actually in previous like project, I was frequently using like a runtime validator, but I saw like we're already using AJV, so we can just hop on it. And like for the like responses, I think there is an open API code gen, so it uses a JSON schema, so we can I think generate that on fly, so we don't have to hard code that, and that would like improve the schema contract between UI and backend, so it will be like better than hard coding it. So like for like the RTK thing, we can just generate it on the fly, and it will be then like really easy to integrate it in other components also. So error boundaries is also like I have created a like reusable component for it, like both a higher order component and a functional component. So we can also use it, wrap every component with it, and so like we have a bit of resiliency everywhere. So whenever a component fails, only that one will have an error boundary. So sometimes the thing is like we don't need to show an error boundary also, like we can just hide the component. Like if it is an error, we just remove the component from the tree and just don't show it, and that's also possible.
Uzair, there's a number of schemas for the resources that are available behind the APIs in Meshery. There are schemas that the project has created, and those schemas, I don't know that they are necessarily either always publicly accessible over HTTP? I suppose that they are because they're in GitHub, but I wonder if, I think to your point, maybe what you're suggesting is that they don't necessarily need to be regenerated on the fly, but rather perhaps bundled into the the Webpack, or bundled into the distribution.
Yes.
Well, I think like AJV supports both, like through a URL also, and it will just provide it as an object. So both ways are possible.
And Uzair, Pranav, or Abid, keep me honest here. Is this seems like this is our first time use of a tool like AJV preemptively, like prior to the presentation of information. Whereas to date, I think the use that we've had for it has been validation of input received rather than validation of output that we're going to show. So that this is, that'll be great. I mean, that's, I wonder, so back to the Systent, the topic just before this, Abid, at one point, I think you were flirting with the notion that perhaps the design system might incorporate a couple of commonplace utilities outside of just commonplace components. Would it be inappropriate to interweave or like this React error boundary, or the two components that you're creating now? Do you have thoughts on this, or do other people
Actually,
have
like these things should go like they're in the because it can be used everywhere. Like it's not dependent on anything related to Meshery. Like it's a common React component which just bundled together with fallback UI and a bit of like logging and stuff. So we can easily put it in a like center place like Systent, and also other utility functions. Like there are a lot of utils like duplicated between different repos, and they should be in like Systent. And the good thing is, like if we will like deduplicate these things, there is less chances of bugs. Like it just needs to go there, and there's not much testing needed. Like these are not dependent on like anything. If it's like a pure component and not dependent on anything specific to MUI or stuff, we can easily put those things in Systent without any other consideration. Like because like Meshery doesn't support MUI5 and Systent is on MUI5. That's the only problem right now. For these kinds of components that are not dependent on MUI or any other utility functions like pure functions, we should put them there.
thoughts from others? All right, nice. Yeah, good. Progress.
Thanks, Abid. All right. Okay, so next up we have a bit from Sonali on connections. Do we have Sonali? Okay.
So we have open PR for fix some issues in the connection table. So first one is there are some columns already open without click on the row. So I have fixed that one in this PR, and also add this row expansion with some styled cards. So now we don't have that row expansion before we click the column. And I have add this cards in expanded row and add some more details about the connection. Any feedback for this?
Nice. Yeah, I can't help myself. I'm not going to give much feedback, but it sucks if people don't give feedback. So it looks great. It's the first time use of two independent sections in the row expander. Pretty cool. There's a small.
Actually, the connection spelling is wrong, so you might want to remove the second D, right? CONNECTION.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yes.
Very good. Good.
All right. Pranav, you're up next on meshing's update.
Also, Sonali, do you want to like discuss on that PR like the nullified put update? So you want to discuss on that?
Okay, I can share the issue quickly.
Sure.
So I have already opened PR for this state update. Like the issue is that when I pass it just on the status, it will update all the field. It didn't change anything other than status, but it will when get response, it didn't send the name field. Like it come without name field. That the issue.
I get it. Like I have made a PR for that. So, but can you like confirm after the call that if you pass the name as well, so will that solve the problem? So yeah, that's not the fix, but I would like to know that.
Yes. Yeah. When I pass name with the status, it will fix the issue.
It fixed the issue.
Yes.
I see. I get the point. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I fixed. I have made a PR for that. So I think tomorrow it will be solved after that, like release is done. So yeah, thanks for your update.
All right, Pranav.
Yes, I'm sharing my screen. So my topic is very much related to, like, almost related to the topic we Daniel discussed and we discussed in the starting of this call. That is, how mesh sync events are perceived by Meshery server. So I won't like rehash everything about the basics, but I'll tell what my PR is about. That is like mesh sync actually, whenever it sends events of different resources, it's of three types: added, deleted, and modified. So currently, if you go to Playground and you check the subscription, you'll see that there are like almost every few milliseconds we see gets update for modified, and we don't want that because like this change has to be made in meshing, but currently we don't want our Meshery UI to get bloated just with these events. So what we wanted that we don't listen to these events which are modified, we just listen to added and deleted. So this PR does that change. So what I did was, keeping the future requirements in mind, what I did was I updated the GraphQL description in which like we can pass what events UI wants to listen to. So if we pass added and deleted like this, then Meshery server will only listen to that event which are returned by mesh sync here. Yeah, so what we do is that we just check whether the subscription events which are returned, which Meshery UI wants to listen to, whether that event exists in the events which are coming from mesh sync. If it does not, then we skip that event and we don't pass that to the UI. So like this, our problem will be solved. So this PR is done. So any questions on this? So now we would be listening just to added and deleted. If we want in future, we can have a selector from which we can configure this selection, but for now it's just this. So,
Daniel, this is a good point to think about, to pay attention to. This is more or less speaking to the client side configurability of the way that mesh sync would behave. So
yeah.
Nice.
All right. Thanks, Pranav. Let's move to next item. That's from Michelle. So Michelle would like to share.
You mean me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael.
Well,
not
I was
okay, Michael.
Yeah.
I apologize. Okay.
It's all right. Okay. Give me a minute. I always struggle sharing screens on Zoom. So Okay. Give me a minute, sorry. Oh, can someone go next while I try to share my screen? I think I'm struggling to get my screen up.
No issues. So,
Okay.
Saurabh, I would like to make the call for volunteer for the item you have.
Yes. Thank you, Gaurav. I'll just present my screen. So I tried history figure just for some reason this connection status pie chart was vanishing. When I'm hovering on it, for some reason it was vanishing like this. So I just raised a PR for this. So any of you if you want to take with a new issue, you can take it from here. I also mentioned the video how it is behaving when you are hovering multiple times. It is not vanishing every time, but sometimes it is vanishing. I'm not quite sure why it is happening, but it is happening. Yes. And also, I mentioned this issue only, but I think we can make it better. The color with Discord, as it is not quite pretty well visible in the dark.
So makes sense. Hard to argue. It makes sense.
Thanks for
Are
raising.
you asking for volunteers, or are you thinking about doing that directly?
Okay, I will try for this.
Alrighty.
Cool.
All right. Okay. Just quick circle back to Michael, if you're ready.
Oh, yes. So let me try again.
All right.
I'm not used to sharing using Zoom, so most times it's a little bit of a struggle to see how to get it to come up. So
Again, just click on the share screen, then select the desktop you want to share the screen.
oh yes, unfortunately my Mac is asking for some permissions, and that's what I'm struggling with right now.
You can also share the link to any PR that so anybody else will screen share for you.
I can present it. I can present it.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Oh please, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is my first PR. And it's a very simple one, just the UI fix. So we had, if you could go to the issue, we had this validation modal that was designed this way previously, and as you can see from our indication, it's not looking very nice. So someone raised an issue to change it to the one we have on Meshery Cloud. And I decided to jump on it since it looked like a good issue. So I tried as much as possible to replicate if you go to the video, there's a video link. I made a little video on it in the description, no up. If you go
it's on the top.
Yeah. So I tried to change the design, the styling to look like that on Meshery Cloud dashboard. So this is what we have now from what we had there previously. So if you could go to the playground, you would find that, let's just check out what we had there before and see if I could get some feedback on that.
Actually, other than anybody else has style suggestions, please go on.
Yeah. So I think that's That's the little fix restyling I did there. So I don't know if there are any feedbacks on that.
It's close. I think as long as you used theme references for your colors, then we're probably good to go. That's been on the list for someone to do for a long time. So wonderful. Oh, look at that. Light and dark mode support. Oh, wonderful. I wonder, is it still commonplace for us to call out the specific color code here? Or do we end up referring to, or do we end up referring to a specific theme variable?
Yeah, it should be, we have a specific theme reference variable. And if some of this is, I'm not sure, but if this is not added in the theme, we should have an entry in the main theme one, and then we can reference. All right. Yeah, looks good, Michael. Thanks for the video.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry about the screen share. I'll try and fix the problem with Zoom. Thank you.
All right. Good. So since we have 1 more minute, and Shashank and Chandravijay both have items on converting class base to function.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you want to speak something about that progress or anything? Or we can just directly take a look at state management, this spreadsheet. So last time I changed this title of this spreadsheet to class to function. So it might help folks.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Shashank. Anything?
So I converted the class-based components to functional in the Meshery notification. But later found out that another project is going on the notification center. So Abid said that more efforts on this might go in vain. So the PR was closed. So, but there's another issue that I want to address. If I can share my screen.
Yeah, if it's real quick, sure, go ahead.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
So when we click on the notifications and when we change these tabs and come back to this show all notifications, then we cannot see the notifications here. But
yeah, Shashank, this thing has not changed. Like we have a separate notifications, and that's why I closed the PR and told you to not work on that. And actually, Gaurav, if you would please remove the notifications center stuff from the spreadsheet, so anybody else will not get.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Actually, there is
Okay,
no entry of the components over there. So, all right.
Okay. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. So since we are 2 minutes over, and Sandra made a call in chat that she has an item to discuss. So Sandra would like.
Can I get hi? So I'm not sure how much work has already been done on this, but just having been here for about 2-3 weeks, I noticed that a lot of people, contributors, ask for assignment on an issue, but there's no. I navigated as somebody assuming I had never read the contribution guide before to read on the contribution guide, but there's nothing within the GitHub contribution guide that states first come first serve. That's only found on the main website, and so I've seen on several PRs where somebody would just make a pull request, or rather an issue will make a pull request without asking for an issue to be assigned to them. And then where somebody is assigned to an issue and is a bit quiet 1, 2, 3 days, and then the person who asked for it to be assigned to them maybe doesn't have any time anymore. So it's like a bit of noise going on regarding assignment of issues and making PRs. And it's on the website, but not everybody, I would assume, has the notion to click and then click and then click and then go to the newcomer's website to read on the contribution guide. And this has already been mentioned in Slack. I know that there's been a very little talk, as I mentioned it there as well. I was just wondering if there are any maintainers who have found themselves repeating over and over where they say, oh no, first come, first serve, please ask for an issue to be assigned to you first. Or if other contributors have had or have felt also encouraged to have noticed this and also felt encouraged to comment on PRs and not only wait for maintainers, as this is a community, right? To tell another contributor like, hey, this is the direction that we're going. So maybe encouraging contributors, like, doesn't matter if you've been here for 1 minute, months, you know how things work a little bit, and you notice somebody's new and is doing something that you might have done when you were first new because you didn't know, encourage them in a certain way, but in a way that doesn't chase people away, but also just makes them aware, you know, kind of like strictly, so that we can have some kind of order and, you know, within the issuing and making of PRs, maybe closing an issue immediately after it's made and then opening it when somebody requests it. I don't know if there's any been within the past few years or months if a similar discussion has been going on, and I'd be happy to join in on this because it does kind of get to me a little bit, to jump in on this and find a solution, whether it's writing it in the documentation or creating a GitHub bot to kind of make this process more automated.
Yeah, total perfect, Sandra. Each and every point is right on point. So yeah, definitely, let's get things fixed and adding it to the contribution.md things. So that will be a really quick item. So we'll make sure to get that updated today. And about your proposal on making few automations on GitHub with that GitHub bot. So yeah, definitely, a proposal is always welcome. Or
Yeah, I'll toss in if I may, to reinforce what Gara was saying and to get at the part of the point of what Sandra was saying is actually it's Sandra that would be welcomed to add that to the contributing.md, like a blurb that summarizes sort of the first come, first serve, the maybe has a hyperlink to the longer explanation in the community handbook, but that at least there's some amount of mention, maybe it's the full thing, or some amount of procedural documentation in the contributing.md. So Sandra, hopefully that does two things. One is it starts to chip away at part of the problem, and it does what you were saying, which is like, hey, Sandra's a community member. Part of her message today was just like, hey, isn't everybody that shows up, aren't they sort of implicitly a member? Yes. And so, yep, most of the time. And so in this case, Sandra is empowered to go do something about it. And she brought it up here, socialized the idea, and she's getting support. And so it's like, good. If you're inclined to, Sandra, please go PR and update on the contributing.md or .mds, and that's a great first step. It doesn't address all of what you were saying. There's another component to it, which is, yeah, you're right. A lot of times what will happen is organically, as people feel, as they well, kind of like if you ever jump rope, you're using a jump rope, but I forget what you call it when two other people are skipping the rope or jumping the rope, swinging the rope for you, and you try to jump in. You sort of try to find that cadence of like when to jump into the rope. It's a terrible analogy, but like you got to wait for a minute. You're like, okay, 1, okay, 2, okay. And you jump in. Like, yeah, that a lot of times what happens organically is that people will hang out for a bit, understand part of the cultural norms, understand that we make terrible analogies and even worse jokes, and then they'll jump in and start doing the same. And so, yeah, they'll start to assign, or they'll start to repeat some of the same stuff, just like you had said, which is like, oh, hey, just so you know, it's typically a first come, first serve. Sometimes there's exceptions, blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, our commonplace protocol is something like this, try if you can to, and you're right, it takes an extra moment to phrase it in such a way that folks don't misinterpret it as, as being pushed away, or as and that's largely what it usually is like, hey, so by the way, it is true for me, for my part, for sure, this is universally true. For any of you that are on the call here, for any of you who've been around for more than a week or something, if I have opened up an issue, please feel free to respond on my behalf. Like, I am not responding to people that engage because I don't want to. It's because so for my part, like, yes, please, like, engage on my behalf. Like, please go to triage. Like, one of the first things that happens to people who've been around for a little while, there's a series of steps that we try to have contributors go on this contributor journey, or this growth path. One of those is, like, people often get invited to, their username on GitHub gets invited to join there's like 5 different GitHub orgs that we steward here. And part of what happens when their user joins the org is their user is now permissioned with triage capabilities. So they can go to not only the issues that they've opened, but any of the other issues or any of the other open PRs, and add labels or do any number of maintenance things on issues, like assign them or unassign them. Or to Sandra's point, one of the things that's kind of neat, I don't know how many people have seen this, outside of the suggestion that perhaps we update some of the bots that go around and add notes. That's a great suggestion, Sandra. I think that's an easy win. Any of you will have noticed that there's the occasional bot that will make a comment on a specific type of issue, or if a specific thing has occurred. Sure, there's the issue template, and there's good info here. That's an opportunity to convey to people sort of the norms or what to expect. There's an opportunity to like, to the extent that if it were this individual's first time, which I think, Toth, you're on the call now, I think. Yeah, Tothaga, this isn't your first issue. But if it were, it doesn't take much to have a bot recognize that and come over and say, hey, just so you're aware, here's the blurb on first come, first serve, here's the standard operating procedure. It's the rule isn't extraordinarily hard and fast. Sometimes it's like, it's super important to get it done quickly, or to Sandra's point, like, sometimes the issue was neglected. And so, it's been 3 weeks since it was opened, 4 people have volunteered. Of course, the first 2 people are like totally disinterested now, and they're doing something else, or it's hard to figure out, and there ends up being noise. And like, part of the other challenge is that if a community member, and this happens to me, even, like, sometimes I'll go open an issue or a community member will, and maybe they're suggesting that, hey, what we should do is change the brand color to neon pink. It's like, well, I don't know that that's the best idea. And so if someone comes along and makes some suggestions, wonderful. Thank you for opening up the issue. We should absolutely consider it and try to consider it quickly before the chaos unfurls of, like, people assuming that, like, oh, it's an open issue, so it must be wanted. And so I'll volunteer and I'll get going. And
sorry to interrupt. That's why I suggest that issues be locked and then be labeled in triage or being evaluated or something like that before they're open to the community, so that maintainers can scan them or come to make sure that they're valid, or a discussion can start around it. And if it's a valid issue, then it's open, then people can start asking for it to be assigned.
Oh, that's pretty great. Yeah. Help us explore that if you're inclined. Like,
yeah, I'm just putting ideas out there, eager to make the noise go away for everybody. So I'll definitely look into it.
Yeah, nice. As you do, some of those are you to the extent that this is unfamiliar turf. If it is very familiar, then don't. I'll just point out like the .github folder with some of the workflows that where you can find some of like the responses that occurred today to the extent that someone opened up the first time they get their first PR merged on the repo, there's a small note of like, congrats, or there's some of those capabilities that are at hand. I'm not saying those address this. I'm saying like, oh, these could be augmented, or this might be a place to
right.
And so here's the wonderful thing about having to repeat yourself is you'll get all that figured out, and you'll get the bot to say the thing and all the and you'll even get it locked down and stuff, and guess what? It still won't work for many people. Many people will say, what the heck's going on the screen? It doesn't allow me to contribute. I can't, it's locked down. I don't know what's, it looks like it's private or something. Or it won't be locked down, and the bot will say, hey, just wait patiently until someone comes along to triage it. And people will politely, completely ignore that and say, hey, when are you going to triage my, anyway, you're right. More stuff could be done. I'm giving you fair warning that when it partially works, you should count that as a massive success. So that's great. Thanks for bringing this up. I mean, yeah, it's an ongoing. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. If some of you haven't seen snippets before, by the way, we're well over time, so if people have to go, I totally get it. But something that I think on an individual, personal basis speaking of Sandra, people on an individual basis, there is such a, and this may not be new to anyone, but there's such a thing as like this, kind of like a snippet, like a saved reply. And I wish that I would remember this more often, but it's, if you find yourself typing out something fairly often, while this isn't robotic, this isn't a bot doing it, it at least might help some of you with those responses. And so, yeah, please engage. Like if you're on the call, yeah, please help curate triage.
That's quite helpful, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you, Sandra. It's good.
All righty. Thanks, Sandra. So, okay, thanks all for staying this long, and make sure to subscribe to the community calendar, and you can catch up a recording of this live stream on YouTube.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah,
I wanted to request Abid to just review the PR that I have mentioned in the document. I think it's from last 1 week. It is pending. So.
All right. Heads up for Abid. All right. Cool. Thanks all. We'll meet you next week, same time, same place, and stay tuned for Hacktoberfest updates. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Gaurav. Thanks.
Bye.
See you, Michelle. Bye, see you, Michelle. Check you later. Oh, Michael. All right, yeah.
Thanks, Levi.
All right. Okay, that's the last time. Last time, I swear. Okay.